Okay, I'm going to try and walk you through how to do a plan diagram, so a biological plan diagram. This is basically an outline of the key structures, tissues, cell layers that doesn't show cell detail. So we're not going to draw individual cells because that would take far too long. If you look at the picture I have here, it's a slide that we have in the school. To draw each of those individual cells would just take ages, so it's just not realistic. So we're doing drawing a plan diagram. We don't include cell detail. We just got to highlight the tissues we can see. Now, in the exams, you're expected to be familiar with a transverse section of a leaf, to highlight key tissues, but you might still be given some other structure. In which case you would just look for visible differences in cell layers and tissues, and you wouldn't be expected to label it. So let's get into this one. Okay, so remember we need a really sharp pencil. That's really important, otherwise our lines get a bit fat and fluffy. And it's really important that we do single continuous lines. So let's get started. So I'm drawing the layer from the top. Okay, and you'll notice I'm trying to use the majority of the space, leaving a bit of room at the top for a title. Could have maybe left a little bit more space at the sides for labels. Shows you the importance of planning a diagram, but maybe the other lines I will leave a bit of space there. So this line that I've just drawn here, I now need to do the line just underneath it. So this is the epidermis. And you notice when I get to a point where I can't move anymore, I'll keep the tip of the pencil on the page and move my hand. That way I don't have to worry about trying to join up those lines. And making sure the lines, or where they connect, that there's a decent connection. So it's best if you draw the line, hold the point down, move your hand, and then carry the line on. Alright, so from here I think I'm going to do the central layer. So we've got the epidermis, so we could label that. Remember, using a ruler for your labels. Okay, so that's the epidermis. Okay, going to do the central portion now. So it kind of comes down a little bit in a drop shape. Alright, and the circular part in the middle, which is our vein, is definitely slightly different from the portion at the top. Okay, so we could label this entire bit here the vein. I might add that label in a minute or a little bit later. The little piece at the top is collenchyma, so you can add a label maybe coming up this way. Okay, so we've got a bit of collenchyma there. In the middle here, it splits into two tissues. You hopefully will be familiar with those. If not, you'll definitely be familiar with them later in the year. Probably made the top one a little bit large. The separation there, the bottom portion should have maybe been a tad bigger, but it's pretty decent. So here we have our xylem and our phloem. In the xylem you can see are slightly larger circles. In fact, the phloem, the cells there are so small, or those little tubules are so small, that you can't even really sort of see individual ones very clearly or very easily. So let's get on and do the rest of. Now I'm doing all the other parts just so that my labels, I can try and fit those in between and spaces, or maybe come up to the top or a bit further out to the side. So I think I'll finish the diagram first and then complete all the labels. So doing the next layer, so this is to show where our palisade mesophyll is. Just coming across and finishing roughly where the division there between the xylem and phloem. So the same on the other side, roughly here. And I might leave some space for my labels just there to the side. Okay, now let's try and draw in the lower epidermis. So about the same thickness here in this example. So drawing a line here. And remember, now we need to make that a double line. I can actually see the cell thickness, I can see individual cells or a cell layer there, so we need to show it as a layer. Being very careful to make sure those cells don't touch, holding the point down, moving my hand. And I think I'm happy with that. So I got a little bit narrow here, but it's not too bad. I think that would be totally fine, that would be acceptable. So I think basically we can see the tissue down the bottom here is a little bit different, so we might divide that off. But other than that, I think we're just about done. So coming maybe down here. Down off here. Okay, so I was a little bit off center there, but I think it'll do. I think that's fine. So now we need to label some of those tissue layers. So we've labeled the epidermis as the upper layer. The next one here, this layer here, is our palisade mesophyll. Let's add that in. Okay, palisade mesophyll. The next layer here, we've got our spongy mesophyll. Oh, the line wasn't too great there. Spongy mesophyll. Down the bottom, this tissue down the bottom is probably a mixture of collenchyma and parenchyma. So probably parenchyma at the top. And collenchyma down near the bottom. I don't know if that's so visible. We could do a dotted line because it's probably a transition. In a Cambridge exam, you'd generally only be expected to label probably about 3 structures, so I'd probably have already met that criteria. But maybe what we could do is divide this. I probably wouldn't have, in an exam condition, I probably wouldn't bother doing this because it's for me it seems quite difficult to actually see a difference there. If you look very carefully at the diagram, the cells at the top are a lot smaller and the ones at the bottom are a lot bigger, and some of them sort of have a thicker cell wall, but the difference is pretty difficult to see. But I'm going to label it just as a reminder for what tissues you should maybe be familiar with. So we've got parenchyma here. And then we've got some more collenchyma down here. Okay, and I think the last thing we can label is the we've got here the lower epidermis. Okay, so that's a plan diagram. It's nothing crazy. Again, it's the mastery of a very simple diagram, some very simple techniques. We also need to include a title with the name and magnification if we know these things. So in this case, I don't know off the top of my head, but if you've got the scientific name, you generally write the genus, and species name. All right, genus with the genus, the first part of the name with a capital, the species with a lowercase, and then you could put the magnification. All right, so just like 100 times or 1,000 times or whatever. If there's a scale in your picture, you could draw the scale in to show the size. In this case, we don't have a scale. Cool, that's it.